Today, Ether pops nearly 8% as crypto's rebound continues. President Trump's pro-crypto CFTC pick prepares to testify before the Senate. And Matt Hougan of Bitwise explains the launch of the asset manager's new GameStop-focused covered call ETF. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Talia Kaplan. Cryptocurrencies are adding to yesterday's gains as investors await progress on a U.S.-China trade deal. By noon Eastern, Bitcoin jumped back to the $109,000 level, but at one point overnight managed to cross $110,000. Now, Ether is one of the biggest winners this morning, rising 7.8% and trading above $2,700. XRP also in the green, but rising about 0.9%. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Stablecoin momentum continues to build, this time thanks to a major bank across the pond. France's Société Générale announced it will launch a US dollar-denominated stablecoin on Ethereum and Solana, dubbed USD Coinvertible. Bank of New York Mellon is acting as a reserve custodian. Now, this is actually a follow-up to the bank's euro-denominated stablecoin it launched back in April of 2023. The bank's latest launch comes as the Senate hopes to enact stablecoin legislation here in the U.S. Bloomberg reports the Genius Act could face a vote by the full Senate this week, but that amendments to the bill are still possible while it's on the floor. Next, President Trump's pick to lead the Commodity Futures Trading Commission is facing scrutiny from the Senate today. Brian Quintenz, a Republican who previously served as a commissioner for the agency, will likely face questions from the Senate Agriculture Committee about his ties to crypto. He currently heads policy for the crypto arm of VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, and he's a board member of Kalshi, the betting platform that faced scrutiny by the CFTC. In a copy of his remarks released before the hearing, Quintenz says blockchain could touch every aspect of society provided there are clear rules of the road. He pushes for a comprehensive regulatory framework for crypto assets, including token classification and trading market oversight. Quintenz is just the latest of President Trump's pro-crypto administration picks to face a hearing in Congress. Last, the founder of a U.S.-based crypto payments firm is facing charges for allegedly using stablecoin transactions and falsifying documents to mask funds tied to sanctioned Russian institutions. Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn allege that Yuri Gugnin, a 38-year-old Russian national living in Manhattan, was operating a sophisticated international money laundering scheme that moved over $500 million on behalf of sanctioned Russian banks and other entities. Prosecutors say that between June 2023 and January 2025, he allegedly funneled the money through U.S. banks and crypto exchanges, primarily using the dollar-pegged stablecoin Tether. The Justice Department said he maintained direct ties to members of Russia's intelligence service and officials in Iran, countries that do not extradite to the U.S. He was arrested and arraigned yesterday and is being held without bail pending trial. All right, for our main story today, Bitwise announced the launch of the first covered call ETF based on GameStop, just as the video game retailer begins its Bitcoin buying strategy. This is the latest addition to the asset manager's recently launched suite of option income ETFs, which include 3 other funds tied to Strategy, Coinbase, and Marathon Digital. I spoke with Matt Hougan, Chief Investment Officer at Bitwise Asset Management, about this latest ETF. He also weighs in on recent regulatory advancements for crypto in the U.S. So today, Bitwise launched a GameStop-focused covered call ETF. Now, we reported here on CNBC that the video game retailer announced late last month that it bought nearly 5,000 Bitcoin, adding to the growing list of public companies holding the cryptocurrency on their balance sheets. Can you take us through what prompted Bitwise to launch this new ETF tied to GameStop, and how are these covered call ETFs designed to generate income for investors?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the question. You know, one of the things about GameStop and one of the things about crypto that we know more than anything else is that they're volatile. GameStop is a famously volatile stock, and of course, crypto itself tends to be volatile over time. The beauty of covered call strategies is they translate that volatility into income. We've seen success already at Bitwise doing covered call strategies on stocks like Strategy, like Coinbase and others. And we thought, why not apply that to GameStop as well? It's a way for people who are excited about being long GameStop to maintain that long bias, but also generate really substantial income by translating that volatility into dollars in their pocket.
Now, in a news release, Bitwise points out that as of March 31st of this year, 79 public companies hold a collective $57 billion in Bitcoin on their balance sheets. That's a nearly 160% rise over the past year. What do you attribute that bump to? And generally speaking, why do you think public companies are betting big on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there are a few reasons for that. We think this is a mega trend, by the way, that's going to accelerate into the future. One, of course, is increased worries about the dollar. Corporations globally are sitting on records amount of cash, and what they've historically done is park it in short-term US treasuries or in fact in cash accounts. But with the huge money printing and growing deficits, that no longer seems like a valid approach. They need another way to protect their wealth from degradation, and they're turning to the best horse in that race, which is Bitcoin. Beyond that, the investing audience has just recognized that this is a positive strategy. And so companies are being rewarded for taking this bold step of putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We think there will ultimately be thousands of companies that do this. We think we're in inning 1 or 2 of this mega trend period, but you're seeing it accelerate over time. It's very exciting.
Let's turn to a big development for crypto, which is on the regulatory front. Last month, the Senate advanced the Genius Act stablecoin bill on a bipartisan vote. In a blog post after that development, you argued that outside of the January 2024 approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs, this is the most important regulatory development in the history of crypto and may even be bigger. I spoke with your CEO, Hunter Horsley, at Bitcoin 2025, and he told me he agrees with your assessment. You outline your reasoning in great detail in your blog post, but can you explain to our viewers why you think this development could be even bigger than last year's approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs here in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a massive deal. Look, for crypto to really reshape how the world's global finance works, which is the market we're going after. That's how crypto goes from $3 trillion to a $30 trillion market. We have to be at the center of how global finance works. We need to rest on a strong foundation. Right now, crypto regulation in the US, which is the world's economic center for better or worse, rests on executive orders and legal interpretations. There's no laws that protect it for the long term. If we look back at the history of technology, we've seen major laws set the standard that allowed for technologies like the internet to grow and dominate the market. We need the same thing in crypto. And the fact that we made it through the Senate, at least onto the floor, we passed the most difficult hurdle, tells me that we're going to get there. If we do get there, I think we're looking at the longest and most sustained bull market that crypto has seen. I think it takes us up a major leg in terms of what crypto can do.
Expanding on that, speaking at Bitcoin 2025 in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, Vice President J.D. Vance told attendees during his keynote address that he's optimistic that the Senate will pass a, quote, clean Genius Act and that the House will follow suit. However, I read that Republican Senator Josh Hawley is breaking with his party to oppose the Genius Act, saying that it should be struck down as it's written, fearing that it would be a huge giveaway to big tech. What would this mean for the potential advancement of the bill in the Senate? And are you still optimistic we'll see stablecoin regulation here in the US this year?
I'm still optimistic that we'll see stablecoin regulation in the US. It has bipartisan support, and more than anything, the US government actually needs it to pass in order to continue to fund the government. Remember, stablecoins have become a major purchaser of US treasuries, and the government is on pace to issue more and more treasuries, more and more debt. So I think smarter heads will prevail. I think we'll get this through the Senate. I think we'll get it through the House. I think it will be signed by the president. And again, I think that will set the stage for a major bull market in crypto that could extend for multiple years.
Expanding on that as well, in that blog post I referenced earlier, you argued that progress on the stablecoin bill could pave the way for a multi-year bull market in crypto, as you just mentioned. Last month, we saw Bitcoin hit a new record under $112,000. I heard you say in an interview in April that you expect Bitcoin to reach more than $200,000 by the end of this year. Are you still optimistic that could happen? And what are some of the other factors that would help catapult Bitcoin to that level?
Yeah, we still are holding by that prediction. I think that's how the market is setting up. You know, when we look at the market, Talia, we see a structural imbalance between the demand for Bitcoin and the available supply. We know the Bitcoin network only produces 165,000 Bitcoin per year. That's the full supply. And we see demand from ETFs, which are pulling in hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin per year, corporations, as we discussed, also purchasing hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, and governments purchasing, in our view, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. As the structural demand supply imbalance plays out in the market, it's exhausting the available supply. We think we're close to breaking out to new all-time highs. And when we do, we think, the market could run all the way up to 200,000. It would help if the US government announced net new purchases of Bitcoin for its US strategic reserve. It will help if we get passage of the Genius Act and maybe market structure regulation in the US. But even if those things don't happen, we think the demand from institutional investors and corporations and governments around the world are enough to lift this market much higher. It is just a fantastic setup for Bitcoin right now, with worries about the dollar, growing institutional demand. I think it's going to be a fantastic second half of the year.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.